Okay, today is 28th of August, and we are on this chapter 47 of the Samyutta Nikaya, Satipatthana Samyutta. So now we come to Sutta 47.9. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Vesali in Baluva Gammaka. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus: "Come monks, enter upon the reins wherever you have friends, acquaintances and intimates in the vicinity of Vesali. I myself will enter upon the reins right here in Baluva Gammaka." "Yes, Venerable Sir," those monks replied, and they entered upon the reins wherever they had friends, acquaintances and intimates in the vicinity of Vesali, while the Blessed One entered upon the reins right there in Baluva Gammaka. Well, this stop here to mention the entering upon the reins means to reside in one place for 3 months and not to go anywhere unless it's important, and even if it's important, a monk can only leave it for not more than 6 nights. This during the rain season in India. And when the Blessed One had entered upon the reins, a severe illness arose in him, and terrible pains bordering on death assailed him. But the Blessed One endured them, collected and mindful, without becoming distressed. Then the thought occurred to the Blessed One: "It is not proper for me to attain final Nibbana without having addressed my attendants and taken leave of the Bhikkhu Sangha. Let me then suppress this illness by means of energy and live on." Having resolved upon the life conditioner, then the Blessed One suppressed that illness by means of energy and lived on, having resolved upon the life conditioner. Stop here for a moment. This life conditioner is Jivita Sankhara. Jivita is life, Sankhara is conditioner. Life conditioner probably is the vital energy. In Chinese we say qi. So he uses energy, mental energy, to get the qi going. The Blessed One then recovered from that illness. Soon after he had recovered, he came out from his dwelling and sat down in the seat that had been prepared in the shade behind the dwelling. The Venerable Ananda then approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, "It's splendid, Venerable Sir, that the Blessed One is bearing up. Splendid that he has recovered. But Venerable Sir, when the Blessed One was ill, my body seemed as if it were drugged. I had become disoriented. The teachings were not clear to me. Nevertheless, I had this much consolation, that the Blessed One would not attain final Nibbana without having made some pronouncement concerning the Bhikkhu Sangha." And the Buddha said, "What does the Bhikkhu Sangha now expect from me, Ananda? I have taught the Dhamma, Ananda, without making a distinction between inside and outside. The Tathagata has no closed fist of a teacher in regard to the teachings. If, Ananda, anyone thinks I will take charge of the Bhikkhu Sangha, or the Bhikkhu Sangha is under my direction, it is he who should make some pronouncement concerning the Bhikkhu Sangha. But, Ananda, it does not occur to the Tathagata, I will take charge of the Bhikkhu Sangha, or the Bhikkhu Sangha is under my direction. So why should the Tathagata make some pronouncement concerning the Bhikkhu Sangha? Now I am old, Ananda, aged, burdened with years, advanced in life, come to the last stage. My age is now turning 80. Just as an old cart keeps going by a combination of straps, so it seems the body of the Tathagata keeps going by a combination of straps." Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha says, I have taught the Dhamma without making a distinction between inside and outside. Maybe it means like Chinese we say, Lai ka gua, Lai sun gua sun, Loi sin, Ngoi sin. So there's no special inside clique of disciples and outside disciples, treats them all the same. And here the Buddha says, The Tathagata has no closed fist of a teacher. In other words, he does not keep back anything. This contradicts the Mahayana, because the Mahayana, the founder of the Mahayana Buddhism, Longsu Pusa, Nagarjuna, he came up with a lot of new sutras. So in his biography, he was asked, how come previously there were no such sutras? Now you say that all these are the words of the Buddha. So he said the Buddha hid all these books in the dragon palace in the ocean. And he went to the dragon palace and took out all these secret teachings, Mahayana teachings. Said they were too high for the Buddha's disciples. It's a bit ridiculous that present-day people can understand the Mahayana. The Buddha's disciples cannot understand the Mahayana. The Buddha here says he has no closed fist of a teacher, so he never hid any of his teachings. Furthermore, during the Buddha's time there were no books, so how could he have hidden the books in the ocean? Whenever Ananda, by non-attention to all signs and by the cessation of certain feelings, the Tathagata enters and dwells in the signless concentration of mind, on that occasion, Ananda, the body of the Tathagata is more comfortable. Therefore, Ananda, dwell with yourselves as your own island, with yourselves as your own refuge, with no other refuge. Dwell with the Dhamma as your island, with the Dhamma as your refuge, with no other refuge. Stop here for a moment. So the Buddha says that when the body gives him a lot of pain, then he enters into this samadhi where feelings cease and dwells in the signless concentration of mind. It's a very high samadhi, a very high state of meditation. So here the Buddha says, dwell with yourself as your own island. But I think the Pali text society is, therefore Ananda, be a lamb unto yourselves, be a refuge unto yourselves with no other refuge. Take the Dhamma as your lamb, take the Dhamma as your refuge with no other refuge. And how Ananda does a monk dwell with himself as his own island, with himself as his own refuge, with no other refuge. With the Dhamma as his island, with the Dhamma as his refuge, with no other refuge. Here Ananda, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, recollected, mindful, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. He dwells contemplating feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, recollected, mindful, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. Those monks, Ananda, either now or after I am gone, who dwell with themselves as their own island, with themselves as their own refuge, with no other refuge, with the Dhamma as their island, with the Dhamma as their refuge, with no other refuge. It is these monks, Ananda, who will be for me topmost of those keen on the training. At the end of the sutta. So you see, the Buddha was almost going to pass away, but he resolved to live on. Then he continued to live on. In some other sutta, the Buddha also said that if we also experience that state where we feel that life is coming to an end, if possible, we should cling to life. Because the Buddha says this human body is hard to come by, and this human body, only in this human body we can really practice the Dhamma. If you are in heaven, you don't want to practice because you want to enjoy. You don't see any dukkha. And if you are in the woeful plains, even you want to practice, also cannot practice. So it's only in this human life. So the Buddha says we should cling on to life and make the best use of our time. A lot of us, we tend to waste our time. We think that either we think we'd have a lot of time, or most likely a lot of people never think whether they have time or no time. They're so busy, caught up with all the worldly affairs, trying to enjoy, that they never give it a thought. It's like some people, they're not interested in religion. They say they are free thinkers. They're not really free thinkers, they are non-thinkers. A lot of people, we waste our time. If we only know how many years we have left, we won't really waste our time. So the Buddha says that we should be a lamp unto ourselves, be a refuge unto ourselves with no other refuge. And we should take the Dhamma as our lamp, the Dhamma as our refuge, and with no other refuge. In other words, we should depend on our own efforts and on the Buddha's teachings. I always say that the Buddha's teachings is complete and perfect. There's no need to look for any other teacher. Everything that you want to know about the holy path, it's all in the 4 Nikayas, plus the 6 books of the Khuddaka Nikaya. Only thing is, if you're not sure on some of the explanation, you can look for Kalyana Mita, a spiritual friend, spiritual guide to guide you. But the main teacher is the Buddha's words in the Nikayas. Next sutta 47.10. Then in the morning, the Venerable Ananda dressed, and taking bowl and robe, he approached the bhikkhuni's quarters, the nuns' quarters, and sat down in the appointed seat. Then a number of bhikkhunis or nuns approached the Venerable Ananda, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, "Here, Venerable Ananda, a number of nuns, dwelling with their minds well established in the 4 intense states of recollection, perceive successively loftier stages of distinction." In other words, they have made great progress in the holy path. Venerable Ananda said, "So it is, sisters, so it is. It may be expected of anyone, sisters, whether monk or nun, who dwells with a mind well established in the 4 intense states of recollection, that such a one will perceive successively loftier stages of distinction." Then the Venerable Ananda instructed, exhorted, inspired and gladdened those nuns with the Dharma talk, after which he rose from his seat and left. Stop here for a moment. In the monks' Vinaya and the nuns' Vinaya, every 2 weeks on the Uposatha day, the monks have to recite the precepts, the Patimokkha, and then the nuns have to get Dhamma instruction from a senior monk, preferably one with at least 20 years as a monk. So here, that's why the Venerable Ananda must have gone to the nuns' quarters with another monk. So after giving the Dhamma teaching, he left. Then the Venerable Ananda walked for alms in Savatthi. When he had returned from the alms round, after his meal, he approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and reported all that had happened. The Blessed One said, "So it is, Ananda, so it is. It may be expected of anyone, Ananda, whether monk or nun, who dwells with a mind well established in the 4 intense states of recollection, that such a one will perceive successively loftier stages of distinction. But for, here Ananda, a monk dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. While he is contemplating the body in the body, there arises in him, based on the body, either a fever in the body, or sluggishness of mind, or the mind is distracted outwardly. That monk should then direct his mind towards some inspiring sign. When he directs his mind towards some inspiring sign, gladness is born. When he is gladdened, delight, piti is born. When the mind is uplifted by delight, the body becomes tranquil. One tranquil in body experiences happiness. The mind of one who is happy becomes concentrated. He reflects thus, the purpose for the sake of which I directed my mind has been achieved. Let me now withdraw it. Stop here for a moment. It's quite a mouthful to digest. So the Buddha here is trying to explain the 4 intense states of recollection, the 4 Satipatthanas. The Buddha says, monk dwells contemplating the body in the body. And when he is contemplating the body in the body, that means his attention is all on the body. It is not among other thoughts or any other thing. The body only in the body. focus on the body. There arises in him either a fever in the body. This fever is a disturbance and uncomfortableness in the body. There's the fever in the body. Or sluggishness of mind, sloth and torpor. Or the mind is distracted outwardly, going out towards the senses. Then that monk should direct his mind towards some inspiring sign. This inspiring sign is something that the mind likes. Just like yesterday we talked about the cook. The cook, he has to notice what his master likes to eat. So he should serve his master what kind of food the master likes to eat. So in the same way, we have to see what the mind likes. So here we direct the mind to some object of meditation that the mind finds inspiration in, that the mind likes. So if you choose a meditation object that the mind is inclined towards, then gladness is born. And following gladness, you have piti, delight. Then after delight, the body becomes tranquil. And then the body experiences happiness. And then when the body has piti, delight, and sukha, happiness, the mind becomes concentrated. Here when it says the mind becomes concentrated, that means he has attained the first jhana. First jhana is accompanied by this. First jhana is accompanied by this piti and sukha. Then he reflects, the purpose for the sake of which I directed my mind has been achieved. What is this purpose? The purpose of his meditation or practicing the Satipatthana is to attain the jhanas. That is clear in the earlier suttas we read. Since he practiced Satipatthana to attain the jhanas, so now he knows the purpose for the sake of which I directed my mind has been achieved. First jhana has been achieved. So now he thinks, let me now withdraw it. So he withdraws the mind and does not think or examine his vitaka and vichara. He does not have this thought directed and sustained. He understands, without thought directed and sustained, internally mindful, I am happy. Here, just now in the first jhana has 5 factors. Vitaka, vichara, which is thought directed and sustained. And then piti, delight, sukha, happiness, and ekagata, one-pointedness of mind. So now, having attained the first jhana, he's happy, he has achieved the purpose of his practice of Satipatthana, which is to attain the first jhana. So having attained the first jhana, now he withdraws his vitaka and vichara. He has all these 5 factors. When the 5 factors are strong, then he withdraws this vitaka and vichara. How to withdraw? Instead of putting the attention on the breath, he puts the attention on piti and sukha. Because the piti and sukha become stronger, then he can change his object. His object from the breath, he changes to this happy and delightful feeling, perception. So when he does that, he does not pay attention to the breath anymore. Then he attains the second jhana. So without thought directed and sustained, internally mindful, I am happy, has attained the second jhana. Again, a monk dwells contemplating feelings in the same way, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, recollected, mindful, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. While he is contemplating Dhamma in Dhamma, there arises in him, based on Dhamma, either a fever in the body or sluggishness of mind, or the mind is distracted outwardly. The monk should now direct his mind towards some inspiring sign. When he directs his mind towards some inspiring sign, then the sequence, like just now, gladness is born, and after gladness, rapture, after rapture, tranquility, and after that, happiness, etc. He understands, without thought directed and sustained, internally mindful and happy. It is in such a way, Ananda, that there is development by direction. Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha calls this development by direction. Development normally is bhavana. Bhavana is actually development of mind. But development of mind, bhavana, has become synonymous with meditation. Here the Buddha says there is bhavana with direction. He directs his mind first to this taka vichara, that is the direction of mind to his object of meditation, and after that he withdraws from there and directs it to that piti and sukha. And how Ananda is there development without direction, not directing his mind outwardly. The monk understands, my mind is not directed outwardly. Then he understands it is unconstricted after and before, liberated, undirected. Then he further understands, I dwell contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly aware, collected, I am happy. Not directing his mind outwardly, a monk understands, my mind is not directed outwardly. Then he understands it is unconstricted, after and before, liberated, undirected. Then he further understands, I dwell contemplating feelings in feelings, ardent, clearly aware, recollected, I am happy. Similarly, for the other practice, that is mind in mind and Dhamma in Dhamma. It is in this way, Ananda, that there is development without direction. So here the Buddha says, instead of directing the mind to an outside object of meditation, he does not direct it outwardly. In other words, it's directed inwardly. Then here probably means he attains the third jhana. Then it's stated here, it is unconstricted after and before. Unconstricted, the meaning is it is without sloth and torpor. This you can find on page 1737. There's an explanation in another sutta about this unconstricted. And after and before, it's probably before he started to meditate and after he started to meditate. That means all the time. So that is development without direction. Thus Ananda, I have taught development by direction. I have taught development without direction. Whatever should be done, Ananda, by a compassionate teacher, out of compassion for his disciples, desiring their welfare, that I have done for you. There are the feet of trees, Ananda. These are empty huts. Meditate, Ananda. Do not be negligent, lest you regret it later. This is our instruction to you. This is what the Blessed One said. Elated, the Venerable Ananda, delighted in the Blessed One's statement. This word meditate, do not be negligent. This word meditate is also, you can say, cultivate jhana. Cultivate jhana, Ananda. Because in the Buddha's discourses, meditation is cultivating jhana. It's the only type of meditation the Buddha praised. First, second, third and fourth jhana. Okay, the next sutta. The next sutta is 47.12. It's also quite an interesting sutta. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Nalanda, in Pavarika's mango grove. Then the Venerable Sariputta approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, I have such confidence in the Blessed One that I believe there has not been, nor ever will be, nor exists at present another ascetic or brahmana more knowledgeable than the Blessed One with respect to enlightenment. And the Buddha said, lofty indeed is this bellowing utterance of yours, Sariputta. You have roared a definitive, categorical lion's roar. Venerable Sir, I have such confidence in the Blessed One that I believe there has not been, nor ever will be, nor exists at present another ascetic or brahmana more knowledgeable than the Blessed One with respect to enlightenment. Have you now, Sariputta, encompassed with your mind the minds of all the Arahants, Sammasambuddhas, arisen in the past and known thus? These Blessed Ones were of such virtue, of such qualities, or of such wisdom, or of such dwellings, or of such liberation? And he said, no, Venerable Sir. Then Sariputta, have you encompassed with your mind the minds of all the Arahants, Sammasambuddhas, who will arise in the future, and known thus, those blessed ones will be of such virtue, of such qualities, of such wisdom, or of such dwellings, or of such liberation? No, Venerable Sir. Then Sariputta, have you encompassed with your mind, my own mind, I being at present the Arahant Sammasambuddha, and known thus, the Blessed One is of such virtue, or of such qualities, or of such wisdom, or of such dwellings, or of such liberation? No, Venerable Sir. Sariputta, when you do not have any knowledge encompassing the minds of the Arahants, Sammasambuddhas, of the past, future, and present, why do you utter this lofty, bellowing utterance and roar this definitive, categorical lion's roar? Venerable Sir, I have such confidence in the Blessed One that I believe there has not been, nor ever will be, nor exists at present another ascetic or Brahmana more knowledgeable than the Blessed One with respect to enlightenment. And Venerable Sariputta said, I do not have, Venerable Sir, any knowledge encompassing the minds of the Arahants, Sammasambuddhas of the past, the future, and the present, but still I have understood this by inference from the Dhamma. Suppose, Venerable Sir, a king had a frontier city with strong ramparts, walls and arches, and with a single gate. The gatekeeper posted there would be wise, competent and intelligent, one who keeps out strangers and admits acquaintances. While he is walking along the path that encircles the city, he would not see a cleft or an opening in the wall, even big enough for a cat to slip through. He might think, whatever large creatures enter or leave the city, all enter and leave through this one gate. So too, Venerable Sir, I have understood this by inference from the Dhamma. Whatever Arahants, Sammasambuddhas arose in the past, all those blessed ones had first abandoned the 5 hindrances, corruptions of the mind and weakness of wisdom. Then, with their minds well established in the 4 intense states of recollection, they had developed correctly the 7 factors of enlightenment, bojjhangas, and thereby they had awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. And Venerable Sir, whatever Arahants, Sammasambuddhas will arise in the future, all those blessed ones will first abandon the 5 hindrances, corruptions of the mind and weakness of wisdom, and then, with the minds well established in the 4 intense states of recollection, they will develop correctly the 7 factors of enlightenment, and thereby they will awaken to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. And Venerable Sir, the Blessed One who is at present the Arahant Sammasambuddha first abandoned the 5 hindrances, corruptions of the mind and weakness of wisdom, and then with his mind well established in the 4 intense states of recollection, he developed correctly the 7 factors of enlightenment, and thereby he has awakened to the unsurpassed perfect enlightenment. And the Buddha said, good, Sariputta. Therefore, Sariputta, you should repeat this Dhamma exposition frequently to the monks and the nuns, to the male lay followers and the female lay followers. Even though some foolish people may have perplexity or uncertainty regarding the Tathagata, when they hear this Dhamma exposition, their perplexity or uncertainty regarding the Tathagata will be abandoned. It's the end of the sutta. We know that the Venerable Sariputta, even though he does not have psychic power, he is the disciple of the Buddha with the highest wisdom. So when he says that the Buddha is the best Sammasambuddha there is or ever will be, you can believe that our Buddha is one of the most perfect Buddhas. That's why you see his nickname is Angirasa, kinsman of the sun. His brightness surpasses the sun. And we know from the suttas that sometimes whenever these Brahmas in the heavens with wrong view, the Buddha will fly there. There's one sutta where he sat in the air above the Brahma and emitted light so bright. these Brahmas, their brightness also is first class, because these Brahmas, their brightness can reach the minimum, I think, is 1,000 worlds. Their brightness can reach 1,000 worlds. And some of them can reach 100,000 worlds. And yet the Buddha goes there, his light surpasses all of them. So his disciples also, following his footsteps also, their psychic power is so great that when the Buddha was sitting in the air, emitting this bright light, 4 of them all flew, surrounded him, and also emitted light. That's why you see, since our Buddha is one of the most perfect, so the teachings that he has left behind for us is also one of the most perfect. The Buddha says in the Vinaya books, somebody asked him, are all the Buddhas the same? He says, no. Why? Because there are some Buddhas teach very little Dhamma and very little Vinaya. And some Buddhas teach a lot of Dhamma, a lot of Vinaya. So the Buddha says, those that teach little Dhamma and little Vinaya, the Sasana, the Buddhist religion, will not last long. But those that teach a lot of Dhamma, a lot of Suttas, and a lot of Vinaya, monastic discipline, the Sasana, the Buddhist religion, will last a long time. And he also says in the Vinaya books that after the Buddha's entered Nibbana, he depends on his monk disciples to keep the Dhamma wheel turning. So we want to keep the Dhamma wheel turning. The Buddha says that we should teach the Buddha Suttas or any other books. Like some nowadays, some monks want to teach the Abhidhamma, to teach the Visuddhimagga, all this without concentrating on the Suttas. The Suttas are our primary source of the Buddha's words. All the rest are secondary, not so important. So it's very important, as the Buddha mentioned in one of the suttas, I think 20.7 of Samyutta Nikaya, that we should master his suttas and continue to teach his suttas. Then the Buddha's Dhamma wheel will keep rolling. Okay, the next sutta, 47.13. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Savatthi in Jeta's Grove, Nathapindika's park. On that occasion, the Venerable Sariputta was dwelling among the Magadhans and Nalakkagama, sick, afflicted, gravely ill, and the novice Chunda was his attendant. Then because of that illness, the Venerable Sariputta attained final Nibbana. Stop here for a moment. It seems that this place where the Venerable Satipatthana passed away was his hometown. So he went back there and he died there. And this novice Chunda is not really a novice. He's a more junior monk. So supposed to be the Venerable Satipatthana's younger brother, one of his younger brothers. The novice Chunda, taking the Venerable Sariputta's bowl and robe, went to Savatthi, to Jeta's Grove, Anathapindika's park. There he approached the Venerable Ananda, paid homage to him, sat down to one side and said, Venerable Sir, the Venerable Sariputta has attained final Nibbana. This is his bowl and robe. Friend Chunda, we should see the Blessed One about this piece of news. Come, friend Chunda, let us go to the Blessed One and report this matter to him. Yes, Venerable Sir, the novice Chunda replied. Then the Venerable Ananda and the novice Chunda approached the Blessed One, paid homage to him and sat down to one side. The Venerable Ananda then said to the Blessed One, this novice Chunda, Venerable Sir, says that the Venerable Sariputta has attained final Nibbana, and this is his bowl and robe. Venerable Sir, since I heard that the Venerable Sariputta has attained final Nibbana, my body seems as if it has been drugged. I have become disoriented. The teachings are no longer clear to me. And the Buddha said, why, Ananda, when Sariputta attained final Nibbana, did he take away your aggregate of virtue, or your aggregate of concentration, or your aggregate of wisdom, or your aggregate of liberation, or your aggregate of the knowledge and vision of liberation? Stop here for a moment. So here the Buddha is asking Venerable Ananda, whether Venerable Sariputta, when he passed away, did he take away your virtue or your concentration or your wisdom or your liberation or your knowledge and vision of liberation? These last two seems a bit out of place here, because at that time Venerable Ananda had not become liberated. So possibly it refers to his partial liberation, because he's also an Arya. His partial liberation and also his partial knowledge and vision of liberation. There's another sutta in Samyutta Nikaya 55.26, where also another monk who is also a Satipatthana also was said to have this liberation. Venerable Ananda said, "No, he did not, Venerable Sir. But for me, the Venerable Sariputta was an advisor and counselor, one who instructed, exhorted, inspired, and gladdened me. He was unwearying in teaching the Dhamma. He was helpful to his brothers in the holy life. We recollect the nourishment of Dhamma, the wealth of Dhamma, the help of Dhamma given by the Venerable Sariputta." Stop here for a moment. So you see, Venerable Ananda praised the Venerable Sariputta as being unwearying, not tired of teaching the Dhamma, helping all his brother monks. He says, we recollect the nourishment of Dhamma, the wealth of Dhamma, the help of Dhamma. So to the monks, the Buddha's disciples, the Dhamma is so important. That's why they keep teaching the Dhamma. Then the Buddha said, "But have I not already declared, Ananda, that we must be parted, separated, and severed from all who are dear and agreeable to us? How, Ananda, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be, conditioned, and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. This is just as if the largest branch would break off a great tree standing possessed of hard wood. So too, Ananda, in the great Bhikkhu Sangha standing possessed of hard wood, Sariputta has attained final Nibbana. How, Ananda, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be, conditioned, and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. Therefore, Ananda, dwell with yourselves as your own island. Be a lamb unto yourselves. Be a refuge unto yourselves, with no other refuge. Take the Dhamma as your lamb. Take the Dhamma as your refuge, with no other refuge. Those monks, Ananda, either now or after I am gone, who dwell with themselves as their own, who are a lamb unto themselves, who are a refuge unto themselves, with no other refuge, who dwell with the Dhamma as their lamb, with the Dhamma as their refuge, with no other refuge. It is these monks, Ananda, who will be for me topmost of those keen on the training. It's the end of the sutta. So you see, the Buddha always stressed that we should be a lamb unto ourselves, a refuge unto ourselves, with no other. That means don't rely on any other person. Rely on your own efforts, and then rely on the Dhamma to guide you. So relying on the Dhamma as your guide, you put in all the effort. Remember the sutta we read about the hen hatching the eggs. If the eggs are not hatched, it only means she did not sit enough. So similarly, when we practice, if we don't get results, that means we didn't put in enough effort. We didn't sit enough, like the hen. So we have to sit until our bottoms are warm, then we get result, the hen. So the Buddha says here, the last part, that those monks who rely on themselves only and rely on the Dhamma, those are the topmost as far as the Buddha is concerned. 47.14. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Vajjans at Ukachela on the bank of the river Ganges, together with a great Bhikkhu Sangha. Not long after Sariputta and Moggallana had attained final Nibbana. Now on that occasion, the Blessed One was sitting in the open air, in the midst of the Bhikkhu Sangha. Then the Blessed One, having surveyed the silent Bhikkhu Sangha, addressed the monks thus: Monks, this assembly appears to me empty now that Sariputta and Moggallana have attained final Nibbana. This assembly was not empty for me earlier, and I had no concern for whatever quarter Sariputta and Moggallana were dwelling in. The Arahants, Sammasambuddhas, who arose in the past, also had just such a supreme pair of disciples as I had in Sariputta and Moggallana. The Arahants, Sammasambuddhas, who will arise in the future, will also have just such a supreme pair of disciples as I had in Sariputta and Moggallana. It is wonderful, monks, on the part of the disciples. It is amazing on the part of the disciples that they will act in accordance with the teacher's instructions and comply with his admonitions, that they will be dear and agreeable to the four assemblies, that they will be revered and esteemed by them. It is wonderful, monks, on the part of the Tathagata. It is amazing on the part of the Tathagata that when such a pair of disciples has attained final Nibbana, there is no sorrow or lamentation in the Tathagata. How, monks, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be, conditioned, and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. It is just as if the largest branches would break off a great tree standing possessed of hardwood. So too, monks, in the great Bhikkhu Sangha standing possessed of hardwood, Sariputta and Moggallana have attained final Nibbana. How, monks, is it to be obtained here? May what is born come to be, conditioned, and subject to disintegration, not disintegrate. That is impossible. Therefore, monks, be a lamb unto yourselves, be a refuge unto yourselves, with no other refuge. Take the Dhamma as your lamb, take the Dhamma as your refuge, with no other refuge. Those monks, either now or after I am gone, who are a lamb unto themselves, are a refuge unto themselves, with no other refuge. With the Dhamma as their lamb, with the Dhamma as their refuge, with no other refuge. It is these monks who will be for me topmost of those keen on the training. So in this sutta we find after the two top disciples have entered Nibbana, the Buddha, even though he has so many monks left, he feels that Bhikkhu Sangha is like empty for him. Okay, the next sutta is 47.19, page 1648. On one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling among the Sumbas, where there was a town of the Sumbas named Sedaka. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, Monks, once in the past, an acrobat set up his bamboo pole and addressed his apprentice, Medaka Talika, thus, Come, dear Medaka Talika, climb the bamboo pole and stand on my shoulders. Stop here for a moment. This is like Penang, Penang, the Chingay procession. They put the bamboo on the shoulder. Then somebody has to climb up on that man and climb up the bamboo pole. Having replied, Yes, teacher, the apprentice Medaka Talika climbed up the bamboo pole and stood on the teacher's shoulders. The acrobat then said to the apprentice Medaka Talika, You protect me, dear Medaka Talika, and I will protect you. Thus guarded by one another, protected by one another, we will display our skills, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. So the teacher is telling his disciple, You look after me, I will look after you. You put on a good show. And this was said, the apprentice Medaka Talika replied, That's not the way to do it, teacher. You protect yourself, teacher, and I'll protect myself. Thus, each self-guarded and self-protected, we will display our skills, collect our fee, and get down safely from the bamboo pole. So the apprentice or the disciple also, he doesn't want to rely on his teacher, he wants to rely on himself, safer. And the Buddha said, that's the method there. It's just as the apprentice Medaka Talika said to the teacher, I will protect myself, monks. Thus should the intense states of recollection be practiced. I will protect others, monks. Thus should the intense states of mindfulness of recollection be practiced. Protecting oneself, monks, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects oneself. And how is it, monks, that by protecting oneself, one protects others? By the pursuit, development and cultivation of the 4 intense states of recollection. It is in such a way that by protecting oneself, one protects others. And how is it, monks, that by protecting others, one protects oneself? By patience, harmlessness, loving kindness and sympathy, that means towards others. It is in such a way that by protecting others, one protects oneself. I will protect myself, monks. That should be the intense states of mind, of recollection be practiced. I will protect others, monks. Thus should the intense states of recollection be practiced. Protecting oneself, monks, one protects others. Protecting others, one protects oneself. That's the end of the sutta. So here the Buddha says that if we practice the 4 intense states of recollection, the 4 Satipatthanas, we are protecting ourselves as well as protecting others. I remember the sutta we read last night, that if we stray out of these 4 Satipatthanas, you go into Mara's territory and you can get caught. Mara is always waiting to catch us through the 6 sense doors, putting the bait, nice sights, nice sounds, smells, taste, touch and thoughts. So if we stray out into these 6, out of these 6 sense gates, doors, then we get caught. So we should always remember to put our mindfulness on the 4 objects of Satipatthana. That's why Satipatthana always has to do with remembering. Remember to put your attention in the right place. The next sutta is a very important sutta, 47.20. On one occasion, the Blessed One was living among the Sumbas, where there was a town of the Sumbas named Sedaka. There the Blessed One addressed the monks thus, Monks, Venerable Sir, the monks replied. The Blessed One said, Monks, suppose that on hearing the most beautiful girl of the land, a great crowd of people would assemble. Now that most beautiful girl of the land would dance exquisitely and sing exquisitely. On hearing the most beautiful girl of the land is dancing, the most beautiful girl of the land is singing, an even larger crowd of people would assemble. Then a man would come along, wishing to live, not wishing to die, wishing for happiness, averse to suffering. Someone would say to him, Good man, you must carry around this bowl of oil filled to the brim between the crowd and the most beautiful girl of the land. A man with drawn sword will be falling right behind you, and wherever you spill even a little of the oil, right there he will fell your head, and he will chop off your head. What do you think, monks? Would that man stop attending to that bowl of oil and out of negligence turn his attention outwards? No, Venerable Sir. I have made up this simile, monks, in order to convey a meaning. This here is the meaning. The bowl of oil filled to the brim. This is a designation for recollection directed to the body. Therefore, monks, you should train yourselves thus. We will develop and cultivate recollection directed to the body. Make it our vehicle, make it our basis, stabilize it, exercise ourselves in it, and fully perfect it. Thus, monks, should you train yourselves. That's the end of the sutta. So here, the Buddha is actually telling us how the practice of Satipatthana should be done. Just like this man carrying the bowl of oil filled to the brim, and there's somebody walking behind him with an uplifted sword. If he spills even one drop of oil, his head will go off. So he dare not pay attention to anything else except the bowl of oil. His eyes are glued to the bowl of oil. His attention is glued to the bowl of oil. His mindfulness is glued to the bowl of oil. Every step he takes, he has to make sure that the oil does not spill. That is the simile to make us understand that is the way to practice Satipatthana. Because in the earlier sutta we read, the Buddha said, a skillful monk who practices Satipatthana in the right way, his mind becomes concentrated. And if it becomes one-pointed. So in this case you can see, if this man is walking, all his attention is fixed on that bowl of oil, nowhere else. His mind becomes one-pointed. So that is why when you practice Satipatthana, you must end up with the jhanas. If you don't end up with the jhanas, the Buddha says that you are not practicing Sati Sampajanya. That monk thinks he is practicing Sati Sampajanya, but he is not practicing Sati Sampajanya because his mind does not become concentrated. So the end result of practicing Satipatthana is a concentrated mind. That means the jhanas. So this is a very important simile on how to practice Satipatthana. The next sutta is 47.28, page 1653. On one occasion, the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Mahamoggallana and the Venerable Anuruddha were dwelling at Saketa in the thorn bush grove. Then in the evening, the Venerable Sariputta and the Venerable Mahamoggallana emerged from seclusion, approached the Venerable Anuruddha and exchanged greetings with him. When they had concluded their greetings and cordial talk, they sat down to one side. Sitting to one side, the Venerable Sariputta said to the Venerable Anuruddha, having developed and cultivated, what things has the Venerable Anuruddha attained to Maha-abhinya? This Maha-abhinya here is translated as greatness of direct knowledge. Abhinya, this is the Sutta 47.28. Abhinya refers to the 6 higher knowledges. 5 of them are psychic powers. 5 of them are psychic powers. The 6th one is destruction of the asavas. That means attainment of arahanthood. So this abhinyas can be called supernormal powers, because all 6 of them are supernormal powers. So Maha-abhinya is great supernormal powers. This is the translation in the Pali Text Society book. So it's quite correct. So he asked the Venerable Anuruddha, by having developed and cultivated, what thing has the Venerable Anuruddha attained to great supernormal power? Because Venerable Anuruddha's psychic power is one of the greatest among the many disciples. He is said to be able to see 1,000 world systems like in the palm of his hand so clearly. His mind has opened up to boundless space. And he said, it is, friend, because I have developed and cultivated the 4 Satipatthanas that I have attained to greatness, to great supernormal power. But 4? Dear friend, I dwell contemplating the body in the body, feelings in feelings, mind in mind, Dhamma in Dhamma, ardent, recollected, mindful, having removed covetousness and grief in regard to the world. It is, friend, because I have developed and cultivated these 4 Satipatthanas that I directly know this 1,000-fold world. In other words, he sees the 1,000-fold world like in the palm of his hand. So here he says, it is because of the 4 Satipatthana that he has developed great psychic power. Normally in other suttas, psychic power is always due to the jhanas. Without jhanas, you cannot get psychic power. So in other words, these 4 Satipatthanas are synonymous with jhana. When you practice Satipatthana, it is practicing to attain the jhanas. But nowadays people give a lot of opinions which are very different from the suttas. They say Satipatthana has nothing to do with jhana. But in the Buddha's discourses, Satipatthana and jhanas are synonymous. So I think I'll stop here for tonight and continue tomorrow. Anything to discuss? Just like the cook has got to notice the taste of his master, what his master likes to eat. So in the same way, we have to notice what object of meditation our mind likes. So you have to choose the tasty object for the mind, something that the mind inclines to. Okay? This one you have to try out yourself. That's why the Buddha always says, be a lamb unto yourselves, be a refuge unto yourselves. You rely on your own experience. You try different types of meditation objects and see which one suits you. Sometimes sometimes some people, they follow a certain meditation teacher, and the meditation teacher, maybe he found certain method suitable for him, and the way he practiced was suitable for him. And then he teaches you that, and then some people go and, in Hokkien we say, si pan. Too fixed. So you can't follow your teacher 100%. What he practices is good for him. You have to find out what is good for you yourself. Both. When you practice, when you are sitting down in meditation, you observe one object only. One object. And as just the simile given just now on the man watching the bowl of oil, you pay attention to that one object without being distracted by any other thing. So for example, if you are paying attention to your breath, your breathing, all your attention is anchored on your breath. Any sound outside you don't bother. Mosquito disturb you also, you try not to be bothered. Pain in your leg also, you try to ignore it, unless it's unbearable. So you put your attention only on one thing. And nowadays a lot of meditation teachers, vipassana teachers, they tell you, if sound comes, you note. Whatever comes, you note. Not the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha's teachings, your mind is totally fixed on one object. That is when you're sitting. Now when you're not sitting, you can observe any one of these four. The feelings change in your mind, you note how the feelings change in your mind. If thought arises in your mind, you also note. And then when you note, you always remember that they are impermanent. And then also try to analyze why you have a certain thought. For example, is it motivated by anger? Is it motivated by your ego? So if you know it's motivated by anger or your ego, you know it's an unwholesome state. So you try not to try to get rid of it. And then also if you can remember the Dhamma, then you recollect the Dhamma when you are not sitting. So when you are sitting, you try to attain one-pointedness of mind. When you are sitting, we always practice samatha meditation. Only when you are not sitting, when, for example, you are walking on the street, or you are sitting in a bus or something, then you can observe your mind, you can observe your feelings, you can think of Dhamma. If you find your mind is very scattered, a lot of people, our mind tends to be very scattered, especially if we sleep a lot, then we have to constantly put our attention on one object, also bring it back to one object. And a simple way is to do chanting. I always encourage people to do chanting. Choose a chant that is suitable for you, Buddho, Buddho, Arahang, Arahang. But when I just said, when you're sitting down, you only cultivate one object. You pick one. You don't meditate on feeling when you are sitting down. You don't meditate on feeling. It's only Goenka meditation. In the Buddha's suttas, the Buddha always talks about mindfulness directed to the body. The body means one object, one form. It can be your breath, it can be a light, it can be a kasina. All this is a body. Because when you meditate on a form object, a body, it brings you to form jhana, rupa jhana. And that is our object. The object of your meditation is to attain the first rupa jhana, the second rupa jhana, the third and the fourth rupa jhana. So to attain the rupa jhanas, you have to meditate on a rupa. form. That's why the Buddha always talks about mindfulness directed to the body. Leads you to the deathless, the Buddha always says. Unless you have already attained the jhanas. If you already attained the jhanas, like the Buddha on the night of enlightenment, he used the jhanas to recollect his past life. And then he used the jhanas, coming out of the fourth jhana with his psychic power, he could see beings dying and reborn, dying and reborn. And the third watch, he recollected the four noble truths that he had learned from the Buddha Kassapa. And then he attained enlightenment. So before, if you have not attained the jhanas, our object in sitting down meditating is to attain the jhanas. After you have attained the jhanas, then you have got rid of the hindrances. Then only you use your mind to practice vipassana, contemplate on the Dhamma. And that will lead you to enlightenment. If your mind is full of the hindrances, you have not attained jhana, then you cannot see clearly, even when you remember the suttas. But if you pay a lot of attention to the Dhamma, it's possible to attain the first fruit, stream entry, but not liberation. The Buddha always says to become liberated, you need 4 jhanas. But can you see your body? I mean, is it? Yes, maybe you can consider it as a contemplation of a body or of feelings, because if it is not feelings, then it's sensation. What is it? But now the thing is whether it will bring you to the 4 jhanas. If it can bring you to the 4 jhanas, then it is correct method. If you don't end up with the 4 jhanas practicing that way, then it is not Buddhist meditation. Because in the Majjhima Nikaya, remember Ananda says the only type of meditation praised by the Buddha is the first jhana, second jhana, third jhana, and fourth jhana. So it doesn't matter what object you use, what method you use. The important thing is you must end up with the 4 jhanas. If you don't end up with the 4 jhanas, you are not practicing Buddhist meditation. Because the purpose of attaining the 4 jhanas is to get rid of the 5 hindrances. When only the 5 hindrances are only got rid of when you attain the jhanas. Although they are not rooted out, but they have been cut down until there are no more obstructions, there are no more hindrances.
How do you perceive each type of character, between the Buddha and the perfection of the skeleton? So by how do we use the skeleton as an object?
See, in this sutta, we are supposed to practice the 7 bhujangas in that same sequence. First you cultivate this recollection of the Dhamma. Recollection usually means recollection of the Dhamma. And so when you think of the skeleton, then you can imagine that one day your body will become a skeleton. In other words, you think of impermanence and how it is a source of suffering. Then after that, you practice the investigation. What are the things that cause the arising of the skeleton, and how even the skeleton can vanish, can cease, go away, and before the skeleton also, this is a human body and all that. And after that, energy, if you want to use it to attain the jhanas, then you have to probably fix the skeleton in the mind. You have to observe a skeleton. Open your eyes and close your eyes, and open the eyes and close your eyes. Probably until that skeleton becomes your object, your body that you are meditating on. So just like a kasina object, you meditate on an object, kasina object, like a fire, a water, or a color. So if we look at the skeleton, and then we close our eyes and open our eyes, etc., until it stays with us. I guess in that way, that's a kasina. So there are certain objects of meditation where it is both samatha and vipassana, just like the 32 parts of the body. Okay, if there's nothing here.